Hello and welcome to another podcast of Father and Joe. I'm here with Father Boniface Hicks, and I am Joseph Rocky. And in our last podcast, we were having a conversation about money, about how to accurately compensate people when you are working, what amount is right. And we had left off on a final point that was very strong, which was what you were telling me, Father, is that inherently there's not a direct correlation between wages and work. And I was basically looking to see if you could elaborate on that point anymore to kind of set us in a more faithful foundation of the conversation, which might be different than the go out there and just try to get compensated the most you can in individual discussion, and then just go and earn it thereafter. So if you can kind of enlighten us from more of the church side rather than the pure capitalistic side, which I try to think that I live in.
Hmm. Well, and just to make a quick point, these are principles that have been taken up by the Catholic Church, but they're really rooted in human reason. They're not the kinds of things that you need the revelation of Jesus to understand. They're things that philosophers could understand even apart from Christianity.
Okay.
But Christianity has taken up these principles and has ordered them, and our popes have taught on them, and there's a lot of helpful. We've just done a really good job of bringing these insights together, and of course they're most fully lived out in the light of Christian teaching. I mean, Jesus is the exemplar of all of these things, and makes it possible for us to live them. But another one of the principles of human society really is the universal destination of goods. It's very helpful to understand. So basically, God's perspective is he owns everything, and he wants to share everything with everyone. He wants everybody to have what they need and what will help them to live a full and meaningful life. So how does God go about giving everything that someone needs to everyone? Well, he could just sort of do that in a direct way, drop things from heaven, little care packages that arrive at your own particular square of humanity, and you have all these things, you open up your package. But what God has arranged is that he's going to share the resources of the world with everyone through everyone. He wants everyone to participate in this process of sharing the goods of the world with our brothers and sisters. Now, we see this in a very clear way in a family. How do children get anything? They get everything through their parents. Their parents have the goods, and their parents share those goods with the children according to their need and according to what will help them flourish in their humanity and grow up and be adults. Okay, so the family is a key instrument for the universal destination of goods, for God to share the goods, the resources of the earth with everybody. He does that through parents to children, and through families also horizontally, brothers and sisters. We support each other, we help each other out. There's a sharing that happens there. And then he also has a way of sharing those goods through those who have to those who do not have. Now, one of the interesting rights and needs of man is to work. We actually have a need and a right to work, every human being. And so one of the things that's developed through capitalism is the idea that, we'll kill two birds with one stone. We'll provide opportunities to work, and then we'll also provide the goods from those who have capital to those who don't. And so we tie these things together in the capitalist system, and there are a lot of ways that works very well. The problem comes when those who have the capital and therefore can provide both jobs and the money to distribute the goods of the earth to someone, when they become selfish and they want to use a person to get their own more money, and they want to give that person as little as they can while using that person as much as possible to gain more money themselves. So the selfishness, the egocentrism, the power trip, the whatever of those who have capital ends up corrupting the capitalist system. if all of the ones who had capital, who were in a position to employ, to give work, and to give wages, would do that in a way that would really be focused on the good of the other, on the good of the human person, then things would work great.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't, because of that sinful selfishness that starts to corrupt that. And so then we have another authority that God has established in terms of a government authority which is separate from capital, and its job is to regulate capital to make sure that that kind of corruption doesn't end up destroying people, corrupting the whole system of the distribution of goods, and that the capitalist system actually functions in the best way. And so government authority can step in those ways. And then just the very last point, in terms of the universal destination of goods, that government authority, the authority of the state, also is part of the instrument. Just as parents provide goods to children, the state also can be an instrument by which the goods of the earth are distributed to those who have need. And so that's a possible distribution mechanism.
But backing up, it doesn't inherently mean that you're doing anything wrong just because you're the one who's running the company or striving to get to that point or anything like that. That doesn't inherently make that wrong. Just to make sure I'm understanding what you're saying, it's if you know that for the value he's bringing to the table, you're paying him half as much as that seems wrong. But inherently, just for anything to work, you have to, from a mathematical standpoint, be bringing more value to the table than you're being compensated. Because at the end of the day, there's this thing called taxes, and if you don't pay those, you get shut down. So, that's a fact of the system. So, it gets to the point of what's more important, keeping the doors open for everyone to come to work, or for a foreseeable future, or giving everyone much more income today, but saying 2 months you're going to have to work somewhere else, we're done. So I guess that's the question.
I love that we're having this conversation, because you're asking the right questions, and I can see this touches your daily life, and you're
I'll have to walk into it in about 10 minutes.
Absolutely. So so I'm so glad that we're having this conversation. And the simple shift, and this is something that Pope Francis has really helped with, is just bringing out a simple way of expressing this. If the focus is on money, right, if the focus is on the human person, then it's in the right place. And you just came around to that at the end. You said, well, I won't have work or wages for these human persons unless I make certain choices. Okay, and then you have your focus on the right thing. If your focus is on the human person, if your focus is on your employees, and in your own case, you're just supporting yourself primarily at the moment, but God willing, you get married, you have a family, your focus is on your children, then the focus should be on the children, and money is in the service of the human person, not the human person in the service of money. And so if it's all about maximizing profits, employing people and giving wages, then we've twisted things around. Now, we may want to maximize profits so that we can employ more people and give more wages. Good. Mm-hmm. But if it's just about making more money for me, then things are starting to get twisted, starting to get corrupted, and the capitalist system ends up collecting a lot of capital among those who have capital and ends up leaving a lot of need or unemployment or a lot of other things among those who don't have capital. So that's the destruction. Now, Marx made that same critique, and he took it in a very different way that created other problems with communism.
Yeah.
So that's not what we're proposing, but the proposal is still to focus on the human person first. So I'm not worried about the bottom line first. I'm worried about my employee first. Now, one of the things that may serve my employee well is the bottom line. And in that case, again, I want to keep my focus.
So yeah, Father, I mean, you're exactly right. This is my everyday life, and there's a lot of balances that go with it. It's not even just the employees; it's also my end user. At the end of the day, um, I got to make a quality product that someone's going to be living in. I'm making houses for people. Sometimes we rent them, sometimes we sell them. Just two different choices, but there's a lot of positive things that come out of it. You know, the neighborhood's more pretty. You get someone who's in there now is working. Typically, hire people, hire expensive houses. They maintain their lots better. They make their homes look better, make it a more pleasant living environment for everyone. But at the same time, the starting point was the house costs more money. So that's part of it. And I get that going back to one of the underlying things as far as on the consumer side is that for right or wrong, it tends to be a general funnel upwards, both in self happiness. I don't know if that's the right word, and where you go with life. I mean, in general, people are happier when they're out working and not trying to skimp the system and just get handouts versus they went out and they earned their house and now they bought it. And now that's speaking directly from someone who's both a landlord with many different income brackets and sells houses as well, again, to many different income brackets. And that's just my direct experiences here. So with that being said, typically we tailor the end product to who the end customer is going to be. If we know we're going to have someone who's going to truly appreciate it, my crews tend to just, and it's not anything I say, it's something that's almost subconscious that, when they're working on a house that they know is going to be worth more money, they tend to be more just physically excited and happier compared to otherwise. And that just could be because the neighborhood they had to drive through to get to the house, or it could be the end product, and that's a real thing. And I don't know how, if that's even a problem, but definitely it's a human element. I've seen it for long enough to know that I'm not making it up. And what, if anything, can be done about it or should be done about it? And those might be two very different answers. So that's kind of where I'm at. As exactly, this is my life, or at least financially.
No, and I love that we're having this discussion because I think that these are really valuable things to reflect on. At the end of the day, you might just feel better about yourself and think, yeah, I'm doing what I should be doing. I can incorporate these different principles. I can see where I might go astray. Maybe I've even been tempted that way. Maybe I've even made some mistakes. But by and large, I'm trying to live according to that higher standard, to that level of ethical commitment, and you feel better about yourself. Maybe it shines some light on your business practice in a way that you think, maybe I'm a little bit more interested in the bottom line than in the person. Maybe maybe I'm willing to cover some things up and offer a little bit less product for a little bit more money to see if I can get away with it. Maybe you find some ways that you're not being totally honest. Maybe not setting out to be dishonest, but just because you do what everybody else does, and everybody else isn't totally honest, and so you just kind of go with the flow. Anyway, it's wonderful to reflect on these things that are dealing with our practical lives, our everyday lives, and a faith makes a difference there. It makes a difference in our daily life. And you just mentioned a bunch of different qualities that I love to hear. The quality of the neighborhood, people feeling better when they're working on a more expensive house, the quality of life when we have work, anyway, I mean, the impact that it makes when things are a little bit more beautiful, when a neighborhood's transformed, people feel good to live there. And those are all a lot of consequences of, again, the principles of Christian faith. I mean, we discover all of that in our faith, that work is part of our dignity, that beauty matters. One of the things that, communism did take up some principles and did have some accurate critiques, but then they did things like, okay, everybody's going to have a house because everybody has a right to have a house. And they built these ugly, apartment buildings that just look like cinder block, transplants from hell or something. Oh, they're just terrible. But the loss of beauty, for example, is just such a tragedy, and that's partly because communism also departed from God and went to a perspective of atheism, and then you lose things like beauty and truth and goodness. Those transcendentals, which are rooted in God, get thrown out, the baby thrown out with the bathwater, as it were. So anyway, I mean, the kinds of principles that you're seeing and the benefits that you see of raising the price on a house, or doing more quality work, or hiring more quality people, or selling to a little bit more well-off clientele, and beauty and quality of work, the challenge, all of those things make a big difference individually and then also for society.
Yeah, so I think going off of what you said before, if anything, um, it's not that we are cutting corners or anything. It's actually that we're adding too much into them. We're making them over the top, and when you do that, obviously you're decreasing the bottom line, and then on the back end that causes problems in my other personal side of the world. But so I guess that's part of where this is all is coming from, because I know that there are areas that sectionally are the government paying for the housing, and they're paying the rent, and those tenants essentially destroy a house at a much more significant rate than someone who's paying the entire rent themselves, with somewhere in the middle being the rent is being paid by the parents. Now, typically those are college kids and get a lot of frat parties, but that's a side story. But you can see upon that spectrum that the ones that are paying for themselves are taking care of it. Also, typically, they're paying you more than what the government would pay, and it's in a better area. All that stuff adds up, and I think that we see that regardless of where you're at in this country, that there's a reason there's rundown neighborhoods, and there's a reason that there isn't. And from my standpoint, everyone's happier, the bottom line's happier, the crew's happier if we stay in the uppers, but we're never really actually working in the area that's the government subsidized world. And because there's no value in it. I mean, economically, there's little value. Emotionally, you get just run down. I mean, I've had people just freaking out at me because I was redoing a siding of a house in one of these places. So it almost gives you the feeling of why bother. And I know many podcasts ago, I don't remember exactly which one it was, you were telling the story of Mother Teresa saying to some of her sisters who were dealing with a very this actually might not have been a podcast, this might have been something I heard on the radio from a homily, but either way, it was Mother Teresa telling her sisters, you got to take care of everyone, we're here to take care of the poor. And there was this very frustrating person who was doing pretty much everything wrong you can do to someone who's trying to help you, and Mother Teresa essentially told them, ask Jesus in one of his more difficult moments, I'm paraphrasing now, suck it up and deal with it, and take care of him just the same as you do with everyone else. And in a perfect utopia where you could, I mean, I'd go down and I'd rebuild all of the slums, but at the end of the day, I'm now not going to be able to pay my crew, no one's going to come to work for me, and the entire thing goes defunct. So that's kind of the cross-section I'm at with the totality of everything, because it ultimately starts with me choosing where do we want to work, where do we want to target in the first place, and should I just do it, because those people are people too, so is my crew, so is the end user. So where is the appropriate balance in all?
And again, Joe, I love the way that you are really applying these kinds of principles that we're discussing, principles that are really derived from human reason and reinforced by Jesus and then taught again by the church in her social doctrine. I love how you're applying them to your own situation. And you're edifying me. I could imagine some of these things, but you live in this world. I don't live in this world. And one of the things that I love about talking with you and having this dialogue is that it's helping you to be a Christian in the midst of this area of the world, in the housing world.
Mm-hmm.
As, for example, in the construction, housing construction, fixing up, selling, tenants, landlord, all of these kinds of things that I have no influence in. Not involved at all. And I don't even own a house. I don't own anything. So I love the fact that you're applying these things and you're asking these questions, and I can hear, maybe even a little bit of agitation, and that's a good sign. Like, oh, what am I supposed to do? Love that. And now again, I'm going to tell you, we're discussing some principles and trying to fit some things together, but I'm going to tell you to pray. Pray about these things. Again, we form our consciences by the information that we learn, by the principles that are taught, that we receive from our ancestors, and we receive in a special way through the church. And then there's going to be a particular way that God speaks to me in this particular situation. Mm-hmm. And that's where you have to ask and then respond to that question. For example, everything you said is perfectly fine. You're in a certain section of the housing market. You understand the frustrations, the headaches of government subsidized housing or of college student housing or whatever. And so you made a decision not to work in that area. Now, maybe our conversation and maybe something else down the line would invite you to consider that again and say, well, now, why did I make that decision? Did I make it just out of my own convenience? Did I make it just for my own financial gain? Did I make it because I'm not good with those people and somebody else can do that better than I can? Did I make it because I just didn't have the patience to deal with it then? Has something changed? Can I do something now? Is there another way that I can maybe do some charity in that area? Maybe that's not my main focus, but I am in the housing business. I do know contractors. Is there some other way to approach that? Is there some other way to be concerned about the human persons who live in those situations? Sure, they have a way of trashing houses, but would they trash houses in the same way if somebody actually took some interest in them and loved them and helped them and made an investment? Is there a way that I could develop a trust with those people? So those are just a lot of reflections that, again, as we grow closer to the Lord, and as we also spend time talking with crazy bearded people and doing other things in our lives, that those kinds of questions come into our hearts and we can reconsider. I wouldn't doubt that you've done the right thing, exactly what you're supposed to do, all the way up till now, but maybe that changes 6 months from now or a year from now. And maybe it's precisely your care for the human person in those situations that moves you to say, isn't there a way we can solve this problem? Because again, at the end of the day, it's not about houses, it's about people. In heaven, there are no houses, but there are people. And so the more that we focus on the human person, and housing is an important part of caring for the human person, but it's not everything. People need more than houses. That doesn't mean that you have to be the one to give them everything they need, but somebody does. Somebody needs to have a relationship. Somebody needs to support them. Somebody needs to be in that realm. And sometimes the person that can provide the house can develop a trust. And that's where some of the lives of the saints come in. We see people like Mother Teresa who did wonderful things with the resources they had, their own particular realm that they could work in.
Yeah, I think my general starting point, and hopefully it's reflected in my tenants seeing it, is that I try to make it so that they don't feel like they're in a prison with a warden looking over their shoulder every 10 minutes about what you're doing. And one of the things that even in my advertisements I tell people is that you're going to basically get freedom. My entire mindset with these are, you have your set of obligations, which is primarily pay me and take care of the house, and I'm not going to bother you. That's a simple arrangement. You go to a hotel, you pay for the night. They're not there bothering you every 3 seconds, making sure that your radio is not too loud or whatever. And I know that there's a lot of people out there that do not share that mindset, for better or worse. I'm not saying that mine's right, but that's one of the things that I tell people. Is like, I believe in you and your ability to figure things out yourself. So I'm not going to be here, micromanaging you over your shoulder. Same with my crews, quite frankly. They know what they're doing, they know what they're supposed to do, and for the most part, we have a pretty good stream of things there. So it's just the thing that I see being the biggest problem, and this is strictly from my eyes, is goes back to what you said in the beginning, is that we're supposed to work, and it's the people who have figured out how to get paid without doing any work, through whatever government program you want to call it, tends to be the ones that give us the greatest problem for everything. And it just tends to be they have a much more negative outlook and sometimes hostile disposition towards us and life in general. And I know that that's not something that I can fix overnight, not even something I can really do about at all, but it kind of correlates back to the whole question, and it's just a general observation. I don't know if they're taking out their frustrations and anger on the house because that's where they're at all the time, or what, but I don't have copper lines getting ruined from tenants that are in good areas. I don't have people just putting holes in the wall. It just what I tend to find, and same with I got many tangible data points. Whenever I do my background checks, in general, there's a lot less items of significance whenever we're talking about people who have been working or have jobs now. It just tends to be a thing, and obviously I can't employ everyone under the sun, but I can. I try to take care of the people I have, and that's why it's the whole point of keeping the business afloat type deal. So I guess that's my question. How overall can we do something about it? Because it seems that most of the problems that we have, that's an element of it, and that's just generally a question. I know that kind of went in a circle there, but we have about 2 minutes
No,
left.
I think it's a great question, and let me take up an example from a different realm, and hopefully the application will be obvious.
Mm-hmm.
St. John Bosco in the 19th century, mid-19th century, in Turin, in Italy, had was able to do some things in education. Now, the easiest kids to educate are the ones who have money and who come from decent families, because they actually pay attention, their passions aren't running wild, they're able to have a future, they have dreams, they have hopes. The kids that are hard to teach are the street urchins, who maybe have parents that aren't paying attention, who maybe don't have parents and they don't have any other place to go, and so they tend to steal what they need, and they create little gangs of kids so that they can have some support. So St. John Bosco recognized, well, why are they behaving that way? Maybe they need somebody to pay attention to them. And so he went out among the street urchins, and he entertained them first of all. He was a great entertainer and juggled and made jokes and did fun things. He got their attention. And then he started to pay attention to them and see what they needed and how he could help them. And eventually he gathered them together, and he started to form them, and he educated them, and he found that by loving them and caring for them and providing for their needs, they actually became great people. And so that's the kind of creative challenge that can come to us when we see problems, like the kinds of problems that you see on a daily basis.
So basically, if I'm understanding you right, that's the core of the parents, and the best way we can do this is to promote healthier families. Is that the answer?
Well, families are great.
Yes, that's a very fair point of him not doing it for his own kids. But I was thinking more upon a global scale. If we become better parents and give out the love, then they don't get to the point of of feeling the necessity need because they're already getting it. I understand that the extra effort from the saint there going out and providing it, but just wanted to try to clarify what I was trying to say there.
Yeah, and the challenge would be, and again, I'm not putting any moral obligation on you, and I'm not saying you ought to do these things. I'm just imagining for someone in your situation is to ask that question. If I paid more attention to those tenants who were more problematic, if I got involved in their lives some way, not in an intrusive way and not beyond what they want,
Mm-hmm.
is there some way that I could actually help them be better citizens, be better, more responsible? Is there a lack of love there that I could actually help with that would help them not be as problematic? And those are the kinds of challenges that, again, if we focus on the human person, if it's really about the human person, not just about making money, not just about keeping the business going, not just about those kinds of things, focusing on the person of our employees, focusing on the person of our clients, what kinds of things can emerge, what creative solutions can emerge when we focus on the human person.
That's a very good message to leave on there, and something that we all can think of and apply it in our own daily lives. I know that not all of us run real estate businesses out there, but hopefully this message can correlate and was well worth our time here for the last half hour or so. So I thank you again, Father, for giving us such great guidance here today, and I thank everyone out there for listening to us. Again, please let your friends know we do grow by word of mouth, and click subscribe on iTunes there. We look forward to speaking with you and giving you another podcast here next week. Thank you very much, Father.
Thank you.